Hello.
Hi, Rhea.
Hi, Apoorva.
Did we just start a pod?
Yeah, dude, I think we did.
Okay, you guys, I am so excited about today's episode. It's like brewing through my veins. I've been so excited to talk more about just making friends in a new city just because Rhea and I are like literally fresh off of moving to a new city and are going through the same process. So I think it's kind of funny that we're talking about it as we're going through it, but yeah.
Yeah, I want to say we have this conversation probably a little too often about how it is making friends in a new city, but just I know we talk about this all the time, but with the amount of places that we've both moved in, I would say the past 5 years, it's always a topic of conversation. And believe it or not, even though we've moved these many times, you would think we have it down to a science, but we don't.
Yeah, we don't. We don't. It's almost like a trial and error because I think every city has its own little equation. It's a rule of thumb in my head that it takes at least 6 months to get adjusted to like the climate, the culture, the people, and then you kind of find your groove.
I think it depends on the city sometimes, and sometimes it also just depends on how lucky you are in terms of the
Yeah.
people you find yourself with right away. I've definitely had moments where it took me a really long time and moments where it connected right away. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of it just boils down to being at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. And we're gonna tell you what works and what doesn't work, but I think at the crux of it or what it boils down to is at least the both of us 100% encourage people to move places because
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
rather move places and go through all these transitions as opposed to like staying in one place all my life with the same group of friends. Can't do that, man.
Well, also, I mean, moving opens you up for new experiences. You get to
Yeah.
learn what cities you like. You get to push yourself in different ways as well. And it's not, I will say, it's not something that we're very intentionally like, I want to grow this way or I don't like my friends in this place. I think
Yeah.
moving for us has just kind of happened. A lot of times it's attached to different opportunities that we get or circumstantial, but at the same time, it's definitely a new part of adult life. So, let's just jump right into it with that. One of the first things that we really want to talk to you guys about is how to actually deal with moving to a new city and making friends or really not having friends. I know that's something that we talked about all the time, but just Apoorva and I both being very social animals, like moving to a new city and being like, I don't have someone to do all these things with or even family here is a very weird experience.
Despite the fact of you being a social animal or not, if you decide to keep moving different cities, it's almost impossible to have a base of people to help you. There's always, at least for me, I've gone through like a roller coaster of emotions. I remember so many times, and even now, actually, now that I've moved back home, I'm in a new place, even though I grew up here, and it feels different. And I have to constantly remind myself that I have to go through this period of assessing, reassessing, feeling overwhelmed by everything, because that's a process of adjusting to all the newness
Yeah.
that's going around you.
When you move to a new city, especially after college, it's just like a different dynamic. Once you go to college or when you're going to high school or anything, like there's almost like a preset way for you to make friends versus moving to a new city. You probably also have a new job. You're
Yep.
balancing multiple different things. And it's not a fun process to get there and be like, well, I don't have anyone here physically around me in my corner, especially when it goes through anything emotional. And that's just hard. I think that's what we want to say is that's not an easy process, learning and realizing that you have to rebuild your base of friends.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be overwhelmed with that.
I think whenever I move to a new city, I have periods of what the heck's happened to my identity. I have to reconfigure myself every time I'm in a new setting, especially in a new city, just because of how everything is so, for the lack of a better word, like new to me.
Yeah, and I do think that going to a new city gives you the basis to be able to develop new parts of yourself, which maybe you hadn't because people knew you as a certain person, and now you're
Absolutely.
able to expose other parts of yourself. But I think basically our main takeaway here is just it is okay to feel overwhelmed, and it's completely normal. So let yourself feel overwhelmed and understand that so many other people are in the exact same boat.
The next thing that most of us go through is when you feel accustomed to the place, you have a great house, you have a great job, but how do you make friends as you get older? Every single time I go to a new city, I don't feel like there is a, you know, 100% guaranteed equation on how do you make
Oh my god,
friends.
no. And if we're saying this and we've lived in multiple different places, all I can say to anyone listening is good luck.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I
mean,
I will also say though, like that sounded so cynical, but like we
yeah.
both have made good friends in each city we've lived in, but it is a very different, interesting process. There's no science to it. There's just
Yeah.
things you can try.
It's a lot about trial and error. The previous city I lived in did a lot of hiking, and mind you, Ria and I moved from the East Coast where we went to school, where it was all about partying, and then we moved to the West Coast where it was all about nature and nurture. And I was sitting there like, I'm 21 years old, and I'm spending my Friday night hiking and then going for a beer and calling it a night at 11 p.m. Well, guess what? That's how you make friends. That's the culture of the city.
Ironically, so we both moved to the West Coast technically after college. And that's what Apoorva's kind of experience was. And I felt like I had to drag my friends kicking and screaming to go to the mountains with me. Like, I was in Denver and I would be like, guys, come on, like, please, let's go on a hike this weekend. And they'd be like one of my friends, he was the funniest. He'd be like, hiking is literally just walking. Like, I could just take a walk around the block. Like, why would I go into the mountains?
I visited Rhea in Denver as well, and I remember this was a time before I moved to the city I previously lived in, and I was just like, this is great because you intentionally picked a spot that was happening, right? Like, don't you
Mm-hmm.
think that's
I did.
key?
Is being very intentional about where you stay. And I've had multiple different experiences here, but right out of college, I moved to Denver. I didn't know anyone in the city. I worked in Boulder, which was an hour away, and I knew Boulder was like a college town, but I did my research. I talked to people and kind of found out that anyone after college in their 20s really lived in Denver. And even after that, when I was looking into like where to live in Denver, there were so many decisions that had to be made from do I need a car to can I take public transportation to like what can I afford on a starting salary. And
Hmm.
what I ended up kind of doing is I really went and asked every place that I toured, like, what's the age group that lives here? I'm going to be going
Yeah.
to Boulder. How many people do that to understand how easy the commute would be? And I ended up picking the perfect place. It was in the middle of the city. Like, think of your quintessential, like, city downtown apartment with
High
young
rise
people. Yeah.
apartments. Yep.
High rise with young, and I would say like young, old, the whole spectrum of people, but very energetic. And it was the absolute perfect place because that's where I had my favorite almost friends-like experience where my best friends literally lived across the hall from me.
I, on the other hand, moved to Portland, Oregon, on a whim because I wanted this job really bad, and to save some money, decided to spend time and live with my brother. Great for sibling bonding, not so great for making friends because we lived in the burbia, and by that I mean the suburbs. About 30 minutes from the city, and I did not do half the research as Ria did. Just lived with him so that it saved rent money. But Portland is a city that drives a lot. Everybody has a car. I did not know how to drive. I did not have a car. I would either pay like a shit ton of money to get Ubers to go to the city or bank in on my brother's time. So a lot of that experience and a lot of my time was spent in a nice house in the burbs, but also I was 21 years old. Like, I was supposed to be out and about. So through my experience and through Ria's experience, I think we can both attest to the fact that being intentional about where you stay and doing the research is a clutch move to make
Mhm.
friends.
The
Yep.
next thing we wanna talk about, or our next tip, is say yes to things, like, making friends in a new city is kind of like dating. Like you just have to say yes and don't think too much. You honestly have to put yourself out there so much. I will say one tip I will give is I don't know if I would like put yourself out there dating from like a serious standpoint and making friends at the same time because it's intense.
I am laughing because I don't go serious dating, but I like going on Bumble dates or Hinge dates to kind of assess the crowd in a new city. And this was a complete personal interpretation of my brother's tip to me about how to make friends. Because when he moved to Portland, he would sign up for all of these hiking activities on an app called Meetups. And he would make a ton of good friends. So he would tell me, Apurva, you got to go on these apps and you got to make new friends. And my great brain was like, oh, great. Like, let me just jump onto Hinge and Bumble because that's like a great way to make friends, right? And go on dates, wink, wink. So, yeah, can't say that I'm successful in it, but I think it's definitely a great way to get out there and feel the pulse of the city. I mean, just say yes to everything because you never know what you might like and you never know who you might meet that might get you more interested in that city.
100%. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people have also used Bumble BFF, but I've
I
never
was
had any
gonna say
success there.
the other thing that I've been doing a lot, and I know Ria's been doing a lot since we've moved to a new city, is connecting yourself with friends of friends. I remember me introducing Ria to a couple of my friends from high school who are now in the city she lives in. And it was a great way to make our circle smaller, right? And I personally now I'm getting introduced to a lot of my friends from high school, and I'm just like, oh my God, I haven't seen this person in over 6 years. And this is a great way for me to rebond and restrike this friendship that we have.
Yeah, no, 100%. Friends of friends in a new city are great, especially because you already know that you have something in common. You have a mutual friend. And that's actually how I've made most of my friends in Dallas. I think, like Apoorva said, she's introduced me to friends of friends. I've also had other friends who were kind of like, oh, hey, like we have one mutual friend
Yep.
and we both moved to this city. Let's be friends now. And it's a great way to build up your own friend circle, especially because you kind of already know enough about each other that way. So, friends of friends is a perfect way to make friends in a new city.
And lastly, harness the power of social media, baby. I think Ria is the queen of social media here out of the both of us. Ria, do you want to tell them how many DMs you've got or how many DMs you've sent people in a good way, you guys, to make friends?
I have absolutely no idea, but I will say this is a great moment for the podcast because actually yesterday I went to my friend's birthday dinner and it was so fun. I got to meet a ton of other people there as well. And the friend I met through social media. So we actually are both kind of like active, I guess, within like the fashion scene on Instagram. I say that and it sounds a lot fancier than it is, more of just like we both have an interest in fashion and like also and support each other that way. But we met through social media and kind of connected right away. And she lived in Dallas, but she was in Michigan during COVID. And when she came back, honestly, it was like we'd always been friends. Like it didn't feel like we was meeting for the first time. And it was just a very quick click. Like I got introduced to her friends, she got introduced with my friends. She's been helping me do stuff for my business and things like that. So it's been incredible. It's amazing to see that social media did that.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the age of social media now. We're Gen
Yeah,
Z kids,
we're
right?
Gen
Are we
Z
allowed
kids, I
to say
guess.
that? We're,
Oh,
we're the old farts of the Gen Z
oh
generation.
God.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
ironically, like the way social media works too. So most of my friends in Dallas came through one of my friends that I was friends with back when I lived in India, which was like sixth and seventh grade. And we all follow each other on social media, but hadn't talked in years. I posted a picture and had tagged Dallas as my location. So she just randomly DM'd me and was like, hey, I saw that you tagged Dallas. Like, do you live here now or something? And I did, and we ended up meeting up for drinks, and it worked well. And then she introduced me to her friends, who introduced me to their friends, and it kind of took off from there. But it was so random. But thank God for social media and geotagging locations.
To wrap up our second takeaway, how do you make friends? These are your 4 tips. Number 1, be intentional about where you stay. Number 2, be a yes man or a woman. Say yes to things, go out there, put yourself into new situations, and you never know who you're going to meet. Number 3, connecting with friends of friends. Number 4, harness the power of social media.
Perfect. So the next thing we kind of wanted to talk about with you guys is during this whole process, it can be a lot because you're meeting a lot of new people, you're really putting yourself out there. But sometimes you have to remind yourself that not everybody you meet is going to be your ride or die, or that not everyone you meet is going to bring out the best in you.
I always like to think of it this way. When you move to a new setting, you're going to re-establish yourself, and that means refinding yourself, letting go of certain things, finding new things that you love doing. So there is going to be an adaptability phase that you go through, and you're going to meet and expose yourself to so many different personalities. It's overwhelming. It's okay to lose yourself. It's okay to meet these new people, but if they let go of you, it's also okay, because that's a part of a new process. That's a part of moving to a new city. You're not going to find friends right away, but sometimes it's totally okay to make friends who don't last the whole ride.
And I think a lot of it too is kind of just having that be in the back of your head. I think the worst thing you want to do to yourself is almost set yourself up for high expectations.
Yep.
I think one of the best things that actually Apoorva ever told me was I was struggling a little bit to make friends for a while in Dallas. And mind you, we were in the midst of a giant pandemic. But one of the things we kind of talked about was a lot of people initially say yes to hanging out with you
Yep.
or meeting up with you because they're like, oh, you're new, like for sure, let's hang out, let's do whatever. And it's kind of, it's not a courtesy, it's more of just like it gets an elevated priority because they're like, oh, you're new, I should come and do something with you. But what you don't exactly remember is also they may already have their life preset here, or they may already kind of have a lot going on and they could only be acting that way specifically because you're new, and it doesn't mean it's going to carry on into the rest of the friendship. So you can't always base expectations after your initial meeting or hangout or whatever with someone new.
I think a rule of thumb is if you're the only one in that texting group or in that chat that's constantly putting your arm out and saying, hey, do you want to hang out? Hey, do you want to go to this new coffee place? They don't want to hang out with you. Move on. Kind of
Yeah.
just, it's one-sided friendship that you don't want to be a part of. That's unnecessary drama in a new city. Find
Yeah.
someone else who has equal amounts of interest in you and is reaching her or his arm out and asking you if you're interested to go out for coffee or do a new activity.
Yeah, for sure. You also don't want to spend your time investing your energy in something that isn't returning because it's keeping you from making people who actually are going to invest that time back in you. So I think that's a
Yep.
really big one. But also, something that we've always talked about is you're exposing yourself to so many new people, so many different personalities that sometimes it's a little difficult to remember who exactly you are,
Yeah.
especially if you're someone who can gel well with multiple personalities, but you're seeing a new culture, you're seeing people do something different, and you have to kind of remind yourself of what is at your core and make sure that you don't put yourself through an identity crisis. But, another thing that Apoorva and I were just talking about before this episode is something we said in the last episode directly affects this as well, which was surrounding yourself by the type of people where the people you surround yourself with is says a lot about you. And that's a very difficult thing when you move to a new city because oftentimes you don't have too much of a choice on who you're surrounding yourself with.
That's
But
spot
while
on.
you're doing that, it's so important to just be like, okay, maybe these people aren't exactly going to be my ride or dies, but I'm going to continue to invest the energy in the right places to find those people who bring out the best in me.
Yeah, I like to think of it as a two-faced approach. You're discovering yourself as you're discovering your new friends, and it's going to be a lot of trial and errors, and don't be afraid if people don't last the whole ride.
Yeah, I think that was perfect. So to sum up this takeaway, know not everyone you meet is going to be your ride or die, and also know that it's okay to spend some time to find those ride or die people and make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people and not lose yourself in that whole process. I know that was a very heavy takeaway, so hopefully that makes sense.
Rhea, do you want to give our people the whole summary of this episode?
I guess so.
Threw her under the bus, you guys.
So number one, making friends in a new city. It's an overwhelming process. It's okay to be overwhelmed and acknowledge it's just not going to be an easy thing. The faster you acknowledge that, the easier the whole situation really is. Number two, tips for making friends in the new city. We have 4 tips for you. Number one, be intentional about where you stay. Placing yourself in the right place really goes a long way. Number two, say yes things. Be a yes man or woman. Put yourself out there and really just get every opportunity to meet people. Number three, connect with friends of friends. Your friends are your friends for a reason, that you'll be friends with their friends for a reason. So use that to the best of your opportunities. And number four, harness the power of social media. It's a great tool when we want it to be, and you can actually use it to do some good in a new city sometimes. Number three, know that not everyone will be your ride or die. Understand that this is a process where you're exposing yourself to multiple different personalities, and not only will all those people not click with you right away, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, but also remember who you are through the whole process so you can stay grounded and not lose yourself. But I think that's it.
Ria's getting so good at this whole summarizing thing. I'm just going to dump it on her every episode because she's doing such a great job.
If you guys actually saw the video of me talking, I'm panicking while I'm saying all this. But thanks, Apoorva. She just watches me and eats popcorn, basically.
It's great. It's great. It's entertainment for me too. But maybe we should have some BTS videos for later. That's a good idea.
Yeah, we'll get there once. We'll get there.
Well, that's it for number 3, you guys. I hope you got some helpful tips that you can take away. And I hope you guys continue to move mountains, move cities, and make new friends, because that's the best part of life.
Yeah. And our next episode will have our very first guest that we're so excited for. But we'll be bringing on a special guest to actually talk a little bit more about his friendships in his 20s and reflect on how that changes and give us any advice that we could get as young something 20-year-olds. But yeah, excited to talk to you guys next week.
Coming to you every hump day.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.